cooperation. In the heart of the Valley of Clay, a great celebration was being planned. The island in the middle of the river was the perfect spot for the party, but there was no way to get there. Eris, who was the strongest resident in the valley, stepped forward. He flexed his thick clay arms and declared, "I will build a bridge all by myself. I am strong enough to move mountains, so a bridge will be easy." Eris marched into the forest and found the heaviest, sturdiest log. He grunted and heaved, his clay feet sinking deep into the soft earth. He managed to lift the log over his head, but every time he tried to walk toward the river, the log tipped and wobbled. He was strong, but the log was long and clumsy. He spent all afternoon sweating, yet the log hadn't moved an inch toward the water. Just then, Alara zipped by. She was the fastest runner in the valley. So quick she was often just a blur of color. "Do you need a hand, Eris?" she asked, skidding to a halt. "I can scout the path and find the flattest ground for you." Eris shook his head stubbornly. "No, thank you. Strength is what builds bridges, not speed. I can do this alone." Alara didn't stop. She zoomed down to the riverbank, her feet barely touching the ground. She found the perfect spot where the banks were closest together, and she gathered bundles of flexible willow branches in the blink of an eye. She knew that speed was useful for gathering what was needed, even if Eris didn't realize it yet. While Eris struggled and Alara gathered, Meld sat quietly nearby. Meld was the smallest, but he was very precise. He loved to measure things and draw plans in the dirt. He saw that Eris's log was far too short to reach the island on its own. Meld began to sketch a design for a bridge that used many small parts to make a big, strong whole. Eris finally reached the river, but he was exhausted. When he tried to lay his log down, it splashed into the water and began to float away. "It's not staying!" Eris cried out in frustration. Meld walked over and showed him the sketches. "It needs a foundation, Eris. Strength is great, but you need a plan to know where to put it." Eris looked at the plan and then at Alara, who was waiting with her bundles of branches. "I think I was wrong," Eris admitted. "I can't do this alone." Meld smiled and pointed to the bundles Alara had collected. "Alara, we need those branches to tie the supports together. I will show you exactly where to wrap them." The team got to work. Alara sprinted back and forth, bringing Eris exactly what he needed before he could even ask. Eris used his incredible strength to hold the heavy beams steady against the rushing water, while Alara climbed to the highest points to secure the ropes. They were moving much faster than Eris ever could have on his own. Meld watched carefully from the bank, shouting directions. "A little to the left, Eris. Now tie it tight, Alara." Under Meld's precise guidance, the bridge began to take shape. It wasn't just a log anymore. It was a beautiful, sturdy structure. Eris lifted the final walkway plank into place, fitting it perfectly into the slot Meld had measured. The bridge was finished just in time for the party. The whole village cheered as Eris, Alara, and Meld walked across it together. Eris looked at his friends and smiled. "My strength moved the wood," he said, "but Alara's speed found the way, and Meld's plan held us all together." They realized that while they were each good at one thing, together they were great at everything. Taking initiative. Pip lived in a neighborhood that hummed with life, but today things felt a little bit off. As he stepped out onto his porch, he noticed that the beautiful flower boxes in the town square were drooping, their petals curling like tired ribbons. "I hope someone gives them a drink soon," Pip whispered to himself, looking around for the gardener. Pip walked down to the park and saw something even worse. The big blue birdhouse that usually sat atop the tall oak tree had fallen. It lay in the grass, its roof cracked, and its little perch snapped in two. Pip stood there for a long time, waiting to see if a grown-up would notice. Lots of people walked by. Arlo jogged past, his clay shoes go-go-going, but he was too busy checking his watch to see the broken house. Others stepped right over it, as if it were just a rock in the path. Pip realized that everyone was waiting for someone else to be the hero. Pip felt a little spark inside his chest. If I don't do it, maybe nobody will, he thought. He didn't wait for a teacher or a neighbor to give him a job. He ran home and grabbed his bright red wagon, filling it with his most useful tools: a bottle of sticky glue, a sturdy hammer, and a big jug of cool water. Back at the park, Pip knelt in the grass and began to work. He carefully applied the glue to the roof of the birdhouse, holding the pieces together with his steady hands. Arlo stopped jogging and walked over, his eyes wide with surprise. "Did Mrs. Gable tell you to fix that?" Arlo asked. Pip shook his head and gave the glue a little pat. "No one told me," Pip explained. "I just saw that it was broken and decided to be the one to fix it. If you see a problem, you can be the solution, Arlo." Pip held out the hammer, offering his friend a chance to help. Together, they worked. Pip held the wood steady while Arlo gently hammered the perch back into place. They didn't need a leader to tell them what to do. They just looked at what was broken and figured out how to make it whole again. The clay birds in the trees watched them with curious, beaded eyes. Mrs. Gable, who lived in the house across the street, came out onto her balcony. She watched the two boys working hard under the afternoon sun. She didn't say anything at first. She just smiled, seeing how Pip had turned a quiet afternoon into a rescue mission. She went inside to gather a special reward. After the birdhouse was safely back in the tree, Pip and Arlo used the jug of water to give the thirsty flowers a long, cool drink. The petals seemed to perk up instantly. "We did it!" Arlo cheered, high-fiving Pip. They felt taller and stronger, not because they were bigger, but because they had taken charge. As the sun began to set, casting a golden clay glow over the neighborhood, Pip looked around. He saw a stray tricycle left in the middle of the sidewalk and a library book dropped near a bench. He didn't wait to be asked. He just smiled, stepped forward, and got to work. Doing the right thing when it's hard. The sun was a bright yellow disk of clay pressed firmly into the sky. Bax and Nico were busy digging in the playground sandbox, their hands stained with the colors of the earth. Suddenly, Bax's shovel hit something hard. He reached down and pulled out a glimmer coin. It was heavy, golden, and sparkled brighter than anything they had ever seen. "A glimmer coin?" Nico shouted, jumping up and down so hard his clay boots left deep prints in the ground. "That's enough for 2 mega sundaes at the treat shop. We can get the ones with the sparkler candles and the extra fudge. Come on, Bax, let's go before the shop closes." Bax turned the coin over in his hands. It felt cool and smooth, but as he wiped away a smudge of dirt, he saw words etched into the back in tiny, neat letters. "Property of Otis. Reward if found." Bax stopped smiling. He knew Otis. He was the older man who sat on the park bench every afternoon to feed the birds. "Nico, look," Bax said, showing him the name. "It belongs to Otis." "We have to give it back." Nico groaned and crossed his arms. "Otis is old, Bax. He probably forgot he even had it. Finders keepers. If we don't spend it, it'll just sit in his pocket. Think about the fudge." Bax looked at the treat shop, then down at the coin. His stomach started to feel strange, tight, and heavy, like he had swallowed a lump of cold, unworked clay. He wanted the sundae more than anything, but the name on the coin seemed to glow with a quiet, persistent light. "I can't do it, Nico," Bax said softly. "It's not ours." Nico sighed, looking disappointed, but he didn't walk away. Bax started to walk toward the park benches. Just then, the sky turned a dull gray, and heavy clay raindrops began to fall, making the ground slippery and difficult to walk on. Near the edge of the park, Bax saw a figure slumped over on a bench. It was Otis. He wasn't feeding the birds today. Instead, he was patting his pockets frantically, his face twisted with sadness. He looked small and lonely in the rain. Bax walked up to the bench. "Excuse me, Mr. Otis," he said, his voice trembling just a little. "I found this in the sandbox." He held out the glimmer coin. Otis looked up, and his entire face changed. The lines of worry smoothed away, replaced by a glow of pure relief. "Oh, thank you, young man," Otis breathed. "This coin was a gift from my wife. I thought I'd lost it forever." Nico had caught up and was standing nearby, watching silently. He saw the way Otis held the coin like it was the most precious thing in the world, and he realized a Sunday wouldn't have felt this good. As they walked home, the sun broke through the clouds again. Bax's stomach didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt light and warm. He didn't have a mega sundae, but he had something better. He had his integrity. "Hey, Bax," Nico said, bumping his shoulder. "I'm glad we gave it back. Want to go share my apple instead?" Self-control is a superpower. Today was the Great Hero Challenge at the park. Every child in the neighborhood was there to test their strength, speed, and focus. Breck stood at the starting line, feeling a mix of excitement and quiet calm. Next to him, Ziz was already jumping up and down, his cape flapping wildly. "I'm going to win every single medal because I'm the fastest and the loudest," Ziz shouted, zooming in circles. Brax just smiled and took a slow, deep breath, feeling his feet press firmly into the grass. The first trial was the balance beam of bubbles. The heroes had to walk across a narrow log, while giant soap bubbles floated all around them. Ziz bolted onto the log immediately. "Out of my way," he cried. But when a large bubble popped right on his nose, Ziz lost his temper. "Stupid bubble," he yelled, flailing his arms in frustration. His face turned a bright, molded red, and splash! He tumbled right off the log into the soft sand below. Brax stepped onto the log next. He saw the bubbles drifting toward him, shimmering like rainbows. One landed on his hand, and he felt a sudden urge to swat it away. Instead, he stopped. He closed his eyes for a second and imagined a cool blue light surrounding him. He stayed as still as a statue until the wind carried the bubbles away. With a steady heart, he walked across the log, one slow step at a time, until he reached the other side. The second challenge was the Tower of Totems. Each hero was given a set of heavy, smooth stones to stack as high as they could. "I'll build the biggest one in 5 seconds," Ziz declared, grabbing 3 stones at once. Brax watched the stones carefully, feeling the weight of each one in his hands. He knew this wasn't about speed. It was about the quiet strength his grandfather had told him about. Ziz's tower grew fast, but it was leaning to the left. When he tried to shove the final stone on top, the whole thing began to wobble. "No! Stay still," Ziz hissed. He poked the tower with his finger, trying to force it to be straight. But the more frustrated he got, the harder he pushed. With a loud clatter, the stones crashed down, rolling across the grass. Ziz stomped his foot, his face scrunched up like a crumpled piece of paper. Brax's tower was shorter, but it was solid. He felt his own tower shake. When a gust of wind blew by, his heart started to thump fast. Thump, 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 thump. He felt a hot feeling in his chest that wanted him to hurry up. But Brax used his superpower. He whispered, "Cool and steady," and waited for his heart to slow down. He placed his last stone with a gentle touch, and the tower stood perfectly still. The final and hardest challenge was the Puzzle of the Path. The heroes had to fit together jagged wooden pieces to reveal a secret map. Ziz was still huffing from the tower challenge. "This is too hard," he complained, trying to jam a square piece into a round hole. He was sweating, and his clay hair looked messy from all his rushing. Brax looked at the pieces, which looked like a jumbled mess of colors. "I give up," Ziz yelled, throwing his hands in the air. "The pieces are broken. The game is unfair." He wanted to sweep all the pieces off the table and run away. His anger felt like a fire inside him, making his hands shake. He looked over at Brax, wondering why Brax wasn't yelling too. Ziz sat down on the grass, pouting, his red cape tucked around him. Brax felt the same frustration. The puzzle was very tricky. He felt a spark of anger, just like Ziz. But instead of letting the spark turn into a fire, he used his power paws. He closed his eyes and counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. When he opened them, the world felt quieter. He saw a blue piece that matched a yellow one. He slid them together smoothly. Click, then another, and another, until the map was complete. At the end of the day, the judge handed Brax the golden super strength medal. Ziz looked confused, but Brax didn't lift any heavy rocks or run the fastest, Ziz said. The judge smiled. The greatest strength is the power to lead yourself. Brax mastered his own heart. Ziz looked at his friend and nodded. Can you teach me that power pause? He asked. Brax put a hand on Ziz's shoulder. I'd love to, he said. It's the best superpower of all. Respecting differences. In the town of Meld Mallow, everything was made of colorful, squishy clay. Silka lived in a house that was perfectly smooth and polished. She loved silence and order. To Silka, the world was best when it was calm, and every pebble was tucked into its own neat little row. She moved with a gentle grace, making sure never to leave a single smudge behind her. On the other side of the hill lived Crag. Crag's house was a wild explosion of bumps, ridges, and thumbprints. He loved noise and big, messy projects. Crag believed that life was meant to be felt, and he spent his days slapping handfuls of wet orange clay onto his walls to see what strange shapes he could make. To Crag, a mess was just a masterpiece in progress. One morning, the mayor announced a contest to build the new Meld Mallow Park. Silka and Crag met at the construction site, but they did not get along. Silka wanted smooth, glass-like paths where no one would trip. Crag wanted giant, rugged climbing walls and gravel pits. They stood in the middle of the dirt lot, arguing about whose way was better. Suddenly, a whirring sound echoed through the lot. Axel came zooming down the hill on his wooden wheels. Axel didn't walk like the others. His legs were replaced by a sturdy, rolling platform that let him move faster than anyone in town. He skidded to a stop between Silka and Crag, his face beaming with a bright, wide smile. "Why are you two shouting?" Axel asked, tilting his head. Silka explained her need for smoothness, and Crag explained his love for textures. Axel looked at the empty lot and then back at his friends. "I think you're both right," Axel said, "but you're both missing something too. If the park is only smooth, it's boring. If it's only rough, I can't roll my wheels on it." Crag walked over to Axel, looking at the wheels. "I never thought about that," Crag admitted. "I like bumps, but I guess bumps are hard for rolling." Axel nodded. "And I like speed," Axel said, "but Silka's smooth paths are what make me fast. We need all of it to make a park for everyone." Crag reached out a rough hand to touch Axel's smooth wooden platform, realizing how different they all were. Just as they started to plan, a heat wave hit Meld Mallow. The sun baked the ground, and the clay began to dry and crack. Crag cried out in pain as his textured skin became brittle. He sat down, unable to move his stiff joints. The very things that made him unique, his ridges and bumps, were now catching the heat and making him dry out faster than anyone else. Silka didn't hesitate. She knew her smooth surface held moisture longer, but she also knew she couldn't carry enough water alone to save the whole lot. She ran to fetch her polished jugs, while Axel used his speed to zoom back and forth to the town well. Axel could travel 3 times faster than Silka, bringing bucket after bucket of fresh, cool water to keep Crag and the ground moist. As the ground softened, they realized that by combining their styles, they could protect the park. Silka used her smooth tools to create deep, shaded grooves that held the water. Crag used his strength to build thick, textured walls that blocked the harsh wind. They worked together, respecting that Silka's precision and Crag's power were both necessary to survive the heat. When the park was finally finished, It was the most beautiful place in Meldmallow. There were smooth, winding tracks for Axel to race on, textured climbing mountains for Crag to scale, and quiet, polished gardens for Silke to enjoy. They sat together at the top of the highest hill, proud that their differences had built something that none of them could have imagined alone.